What? That'd be way too much of us.
I think so. Um, 8 hours is a long time.
Yeah,
Very long episode.
that would be torture for just about everyone.
That'd be torture for me, I think.
I think everyone's at, yeah, it would be torture for you. I think everyone is at PHP World, aren't they?
Pretty much, yeah. There's a lot of people at PHP World, so
Well,
that's okay. They just have to get the podcast, as a podcast as opposed to a live hangout. No big deal.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that'll boost our numbers up, right?
Hopefully, yeah, by at least
By
70.
yeah,
Maybe, I don't know.
yeah, we'll see.
All right, so this is episode 14, right? I
Don't.
sure hope so, because that's what I called this hangout. Yeah, the last one was 13, which I still haven't actually released, so we should do that.
Yeah, we should do that.
Well,
Yeah.
so we'll be doing that, and then we'll hit this one like a week later.
Okay, I'm alright with that. I'm
Yeah.
alright with that.
All right. So I guess we go and get this one started. I don't know if anyone is alive in the IRC channel or not. Let's check.
Well, I think the Dragon Man is at World.
Yeah, Chris is at World.
Joe's at World.
Joe's also at World, yeah. So there's at least two.
I don't know if John's here or if he's just idling.
Probably just idly. Looks that way.
Can't say I blame him.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it's a cool room. It's a cool channel to idle in, I guess. So
Hey, you know,
yeah, you can always idle and lose the couple.
we'll leave you
That's what I
alone.
do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm just gonna kick this one off.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome to the Loosely Couple Podcast, episode 14. We are your hosts. I'm Jeff, and this is Matt. Today we're here to talk about our experiences, or just the general idea of being remote. We're calling this one the not-so-secret life of remote developers. Or at least that's what I'm calling it. I guess
Yeah.
Matt is too.
Yeah, no,
How's it going, Matt?
that works for me.
All right.
It's going okay. Got a little bit of the post-conference blues.
Oh, yeah.
You know, especially now that everyone's at another conference again this week. But yeah, it's going okay. I guess.
It's going okay. Yeah, so we were both out at True North over the weekend in Toronto,
Yes.
which was a pretty good conference. A pretty good conference. Good thing
Yeah.
Grumpy doesn't listen to this, right?
Yeah, I know. Good thing he doesn't or his competitors.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was a good conference. I thought. Lots of fun stuff went on.
Yeah.
Talks were good.
Yeah.
I had a talk. Matt had a talk. I think
Yeah.
we did good.
I think so.
I didn't see any negative stuff that said I really sucked, so that's good.
Yeah. No, it's always a bonus.
Yeah. I mean, I hate when I get the 2-star rating that says I'm terrible, but
Yes.
yeah,
Or
those
that,
are rough.
or that you're self-deprecating.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think it was a really good conference. You know, unfortunately, for anybody that's seen my tweets, I had some not so great things go on while I was there. You know, didn't handle myself the way that I wanted to in a lot of different ways. So
Hey, but it's all about learning from it, right?
yeah,
Learn from it, move on, get better, grow. I think it's all good.
it's something that absolutely that I intend to learn from. That I intend to not have happen again.
Yeah.
And you know, we normally try to keep this light. I'm just trying to be serious here for a couple minutes. You know I kind of went on the. I know it's weird, right? I kind of went on the True North apology tour for a few days there after we got back, where there was a lot of people I had to reach out to and apologize for the way I comported myself. But yeah, like you said, I think it's definitely something to learn from. I'm not, you know, proud of it or happy about it, but it happened, and I'm gonna do my best to kind of move forward. And yeah, that's my one serious contribution here for the day.
Well, we can't tell how serious you are because of the glasses. So, there's that. Oh,
I'm
dead
serious.
serious.
I'm
Okay,
dead
cool.
serious.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point, and I think there's also some really good conversations going on right now. Pablo had a fantastic post about
Yep. I read that one.
what we push, or what conference organizers, I guess, push in terms of social, and then Daniel Cousineau, your twinsy,
My
and
twinsy, yeah,
the leader of the webring.sexy, Daniel, he also had a very good follow-up talking about Lone Star and
absolutely.
Lone Star's social aspect, which if you have never been to Lone Star, I highly encourage you to try to figure out a way to get there because
You gotta go.
they're, yeah.
And especially if you're uncomfortable. I mean, you should go regardless. But if you're uncomfortable around alcohol, or for whatever reason choose not to imbibe, they do a really fantastic job of having a lot of different activities that revolve around fun and that revolve around just kind of generally being together. So that's an excellent conference. If that's one of the things that's kind of kept you away because you hear stories like the one I had this past weekend, or other horror stories about it just being basically a booze fest. Shout out to the Lone Star guys because they do a fantastic job of being inclusive no matter what your stance is on alcohol and that type of stuff. So I want to give
And
those guys a shout out.
also, as great as Daniel's post is, if you're a conference organizer and you want to see how it should be done, you should come to the conference and check it out. Like you should go to Lone
Oh,
Star.
absolutely, absolutely. It's I think as far as I was going to say as far as community conferences go, but I think as far as any conference goes, it's definitely for me something I try to submit to every year, and it's one of the few that if I didn't get selected to talk, I would try to find a way down to go because it's that good.
Yeah. So
All
there,
right,
I think that's our plug.
yeah, we've puffed them up enough. Let's.
Yeah, I think so. Let's not talk about them. It's not like they pay us or anything. So
Yeah, I know.
seriously.
We are offering sponsorships though, guys.
Yeah, we are. We're offering sponsorships. We also like to speak at conferences at Lone Star. CFP is open, so.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. That's how it works, right? We do.
I think so. We do a spot for them, and they get us there.
Cool. I'll let them know. I'll DM them or something. Anyway, so we're actually talking about remote working today, believe it or not.
Yes.
Talking about conferences. We already did that one. Actually live from Lone Star last year. So
That's correct.
So remote working. How long have you been working remote, Matt?
I guess it'll be about 2 years in April. Wow. Yeah.
Nice.
So about a year and a half.
Okay, so here's something I like to ask other people. So I've been working for almost 3 years remote.
Okay.
So what is the one thing that surprised you most about being a remote developer?
Honestly, the thing that surprised me the most is how bad a lot of the communication tools are. I think, like when I first started, I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just IM or we'll just Skype or Hangout or whatever, and it'll be fine. It'll be like I'm there. And I really, I was really surprised at how much harder I had to work from a communication standpoint being at home as opposed to being in the office. I really took for granted the ability to be able to just see somebody in the break room or pop over to somebody's desk and interrupt them right in the middle of their huge feature that they were working on.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. It's like I would say that was also very surprising for me. I think the most surprising thing for me personally was just, and it's kind of related, but how much I ended up missing being working in an office, like missing having that time to just, I mean, there's situations where, so we're talking about communication, right? So you're Skyping with somebody, you're in a Google Hangout with somebody or whatever, and then somebody's in the desk behind theirs, and you can maybe see like them moving around or whatever, and you want to say something to them, or they're saying something you can't quite hear them or whatever. So you're there in presence, like virtually, but you're not really there. Like you can't actually participate, and it's difficult to see and hear, and it's not an easy problem to solve. Like we, where I work, we kind of have a homegrown, possibly evolving being which is called Harold, which is our kind of telepresence bot.
Okay.
And we actually made a name. It was like, I don't remember. Like, we actually made Harold stand for something, but we named him Harold. So we've been talking about like improvements to Harold, because right now he's a cart, and there's a machine on it and a keyboard and a microphone and everything. But if you move him anywhere, you have to drag the plug, so he's kind of tethered. So we're talking about getting like one of those hospital batteries and putting it on the cart so it can charge while sitting in like a certain area, and then we can move him around freely. So we're thinking about doing stuff like that. Well, it was humorous because one of my coworkers, who's also remote, he goes, what I really want? I want to put like a robotic arm so I can raise Harold's hand when I have something to say, because that's something that they don't tell you when you're remote. It's very difficult to like deal with there's certain social cues that you don't get when you're on a conference call.
Right.
Like two people are talking, and they can kind of watch each other and see when there's going to be a pause and interject. But when you're remote, you've got a short delay, sometimes a little lag, and then you can't necessarily see and like pick up on that cue. Yeah. So he wanted a little flag that he could raise that would indicate, hey, there's someone that's in this telepresence bot right now has something to say. And I was like, the irony here is if you built that, we, the remotes, wouldn't be able to see the hand, right? Like, we wouldn't be able to actually see the physical arm raise. We'd have to have an indicator somewhere else. I was like, that's kind of the irony. We're doing it for the people there, but then we're also excluding ourselves.
Well, that's... Yeah, and plus if you spent the time to make a robotic arm that you could remotely control from a Google Hangout, you probably wouldn't actually get any actual work done. Unless it was all in your...
I would argue, sir, that that is actual work.
All right, that's cool.
I mean, that's important, right? It's
all the ski slopes are going to benefit from that.
They are, because it allows us to communicate more efficiently.
Okay.
See?
Yeah, you're playing the whole project manager game now. Now that you're kind of upper management.
Upper.
You're in the upper echelon.
I would not consider myself upper management.
Well, I would.
I'm like first level management.
You're like upper rails management.
Flapping around like a bird, just learned that it has wings. That's what I am.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, you're that. So.
I am.
You're learning the spin game is what you're doing.
There you go. I'm learning. I need to work a few manager words in.
Yeah. But hopefully the arm will have synergy.
Yeah, it's gonna have synergy amongst the team. Yeah.
And be agile.
Yeah. Anyway, so just I know we need to talk about this because it's important.
Yes.
You don't have to wear pants when you're remote.
That is true.
Yeah, you really don't. I mean, there's, man, I wish I remember the thing. There's like this. There's 3 things, and you can pick 2 of them. It's like no pants, standing desk, or I forget what the third one is. But it's basically saying, as a rule, if you're going to be on camera, you can choose to not wear pants, but you need to be at a standing desk or seated, right? Like you can't.
Yeah.
Walking around with no pants on. So.
Right. There's still some decorum that you have to follow when you're on a meeting pantsless. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to wear pants.
So I have a confession here.
You're not wearing pants right now, are you?
No, I am wearing pants right now.
Okay.
That's not my confession. That would have been a good one.
Yes.
My confession is I normally wear pants.
Yeah?
Yeah. I do too. I joke about it a lot, and I joke about being pantsless, and it's kind of the remote joke. Like, it's like the one remote joke that's actually any good. But most of the time, I have pants. I have worked pantsless before, but most of the time, sorry to either excite or disappoint everyone, I do have pants on.
Yeah, so I think there's one person, Juan Treminio, I think he actually does not wear pants ever.
I would believe that in a second.
But yeah, so well, I mean, I wear pants a lot, but I also wear like basketball shorts a lot,
Yeah.
which interestingly, so my day, I actually have a commute because I take my son to daycare every morning.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've got like a 3 minute commute to daycare and like a 3 minute back. So I have to
Okay.
drop him off in the morning. I get the nastiest looks from like the other parents. I'm here wearing like a t-shirt and basketball shorts or whatever, looking like I just got out of bed because I did.
Yeah.
And they're all ready for work at their office jobs, and they're like, they look at me like, what does this guy do with his life? I'm like, that's
Right.
fine. I'm
What
going
a
back home.
what a deadbeat.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, see, I have it even easier than that. I have about a 3-minute commute each way, but only have to take the kids to their mom's house
Nice.
because their mom works at the school that they go to. So rather than me make the 25-minute drive to school and back, which is it should be an hour out of my morning, I just have to drive them over to her house, and I only have to do that on Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah,
So I get no scorn from
that's cool.
people
Yeah.
unless one of the kids gets sick, and I have to go pick them up at school. And then, yeah, generally I'm in a t-shirt, and like right now I've got sweatpants on, as you can see. I got my
Nice.
Iowa Hawkeye sweatpants on.
We don't need to see your pants, man.
I know, but
That's cool.
yeah. So normally I show up looking like a college student.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's fine. I don't think that's a big deal.
Well,
I think that's a privilege, right?
they can judge me if they want,
Yeah, and they probably will.
and they probably do.
I mean, I would, but
I would too.
yeah.
Even being remote, I would judge myself and others.
So here's another thing that I find interesting about the life of remote.
Yes.
People kind of assume that remote means you're free to do anything all day long. Like, uh,
Like,
like oh
example.
yes, example. So our dog food, we're almost out of dog food. So it's like, oh cool, you can run to the store and buy dog food. No, I can't. I'm working, right? Like I can't just drop what I'm doing and drive, 20 minutes to go get dog food just because I'm home.
Your closest dog food place is 20 minutes away.
Um, it's probably not exactly 20 minutes, but
Okay.
it's probably
Well,
pretty
I
close.
wasn't trying to be exact. It's farther away than the daycare.
Yes, it is much
Okay.
farther away than daycare.
Okay. Is it a HEB?
No, HEB is right down the street, but we don't buy dog food at HEB
Why?
because we have a large German Shepherd who requires large German Shepherd food.
Okay. I don't have any pets, so.
Oh, well, yeah. So we don't buy like normal food because she would eat like the entire bag
Okay.
and still be hungry.
So you have to buy it in bulk, and it's cheaper to buy it elsewhere.
Well, yeah. Well, sort of. We buy a different type of food. Buy a better quality of food. Anyway,
This is not about your dog food. We'll get off this subject.
I mean, we could talk about that if you want.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. We probably lose our 5 listeners or whatever. But just kidding. Just kidding. Um, yeah. Let's see. What else? Oh, so here's a pro tip. You. Why is that funny?
I don't know, because the way you prefaced it.
Here's a pro tip.
Okay, go for it.
Like when you're remote, find some way to organize your stuff. Like find some way to organize your tasks, whether it's electronic tool or a what I have is a whiteboard where I put sticky notes and stuff. So it's
Right.
almost like I'm in an office, but have something where you can keep track of that stuff because it's very easy when you're in an office to like catch up with the conversations about what things are happening. Like you can easily figure out, someone over here is talking about this particular task, but it's a priority.
Yeah.
But when you're remote, it's very easy to lose track of that because all you've got is, your ticket system or whatever. So it's very easy to kind of step back from it.
Right.
So have a way to tell yourself this is a priority. So
Yes.
for me, I use sticky notes, and I've got those little sticky note flag things that I stick on there that are like, this one's high priority, whatever, and then I arrange them in an order. But whatever system works for you, find something, but don't think that you're just going to hang out and and just figure it out like you would when you're in the thick of it, talking to people in real time.
Right. So do you want to hear about my interesting method that I came up with?
Yeah, what is your interesting method?
So I have a notebook, a big, actually hardcover notebook.
This is separate from your binder.
This is separate from my binder of jokes, yes.
Okay, all right, cool.
I have a large binder. No, a notebook. I have a large notebook. Throwing me off. You're throwing me off. I have a large notebook, and to be honest, I'm not great about doing it every day, but typically what I do is I'll plan out not just my work tasks, but all the other things that need to get done that day, whether it be dishes or laundry or some reading that I wanted to do, and I'll write everything that I need to do in no particular order down on this notebook, and then this is going to sound really bad because I'm not a proponent of Agile whatsoever, but I assign points to them.
Okay.
And the points aren't related to the effort, but to the priority.
Okay.
So I'll take all the tickets that I have. I'll take all the household things that I have to do. Obviously, cleaning my apartment is not usually prioritized very high, as you can probably tell from behind me. And then what I'll do is I'll go down the list and I'll make sure I go from 5 to 1, so you can have multiple 5s and multiples of every number. And what I'll do is I'll go down and try to finish the 5s and the 4s. 5 and 4 basically means it has to get done that day. And 3s are, it'd be really nice to get that done that day.
Yeah.
And 2s and 1s are typically a 2 or a 1. If they don't get done that day, they will move to the next day and become a 3.
Okay.
And so that's how I kind of keep track of everything that I need to do. As I'm sure everyone knows by now, I'm the least organized of the two of us.
I don't know if I would call myself organized, but okay.
You seem organized there. How's that?
I seem organized.
I don't know if that even means anything, but you seem organized. And that's one thing I have a really hard time with, is prioritizing what I need to do and organizing how I need to do it and things like that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I can roll with I seem organized, because I'm kind of an anal retentive person about stuff like that. I like to. Yeah.
No, you are.
I like things to be kind of in an order or whatever. So yeah, I guess I can see that.
Yeah. So that's kind of my plan for it. Is I just try to go through and knock out all the 5s and 4s, and the 5s and 4s are obviously any work tickets that are due that day. Obviously, get a 5 or a 4. Any household tasks, like if it's been 2 weeks and I haven't done laundry, which is about right, because I have to go to the laundromat and I've got about 1 billion T-shirts.
Yeah.
So I can cycle through them pretty fast. And 2 weeks is about the premium laundry load, where I can get away with only spending $10 at the laundromat.
Gotcha.
So, if I'm at that 2-week mark, laundry will be a 5. I won't even put it on the list until a week and a half. And
okay. Yeah.
But it all relies on my memory, and I almost feel like I need a tool to supplement that, which would defeat the purpose of that tool. So,
yeah.
Organization is a very difficult thing for me.
So here's, I had a system for laundry, of course. I know, surprise, surprise, but
I don't believe it.
So I got married, and I found out that that my wife doesn't do laundry the way I do.
Oh.
I just kind of split laundry into, colored and not colored. So things that are anything other than white, and then mostly white things.
Okay.
And then I just kind of run them through the washer and the dryer, and then done.
Right.
That's how I did laundry.
Isn't that how is there a third step that I don't know about?
Yes, there is. So my wife sorts them by color group, and then basically fabric type, and she's got all this all these rules, and certain things can be dried and certain things can't be dried, which I guess I understand, but
right. Most of the time you can read the tag and it'll tell you.
Yeah, well, who has time for that? But
right.
So I told her, I was like, when she first yelled at me, well, why don't you just not buy things that need this special treatment or whatever?
That's what
Which apparently is not the right answer.
I do.
So I'm not really allowed to do a lot of laundry. So I basically like have my own little piles of things, and I keep track of them for like, oh, I need to wash these shirts or whatever. So I do it myself, just kind of there.
So
and then,
she does like a Roy G. Biv of laundry.
kind of, yeah. It's weird for even me who likes to organize things. So
That's really, I mean, that's. See, if it was me, most of my shirts are red, so my Roy would be really big, right? My red, yellows, and oranges would be like a huge load of laundry, and then my G Bivs would be lacking.
yeah, I like how we're talking about laundry now. Anyway,
We don't know.
so
We
this
don't
is
know
the
what
thing
you
you can
mean.
do while you're remote is you could do laundry. Yeah, so here's a fun benefit.
Yes.
So I like to barbecue, which takes a long time.
Yeah.
But when you're remote, you can do that.
Yeah.
Because I can, put something on and go check it every hour or two or whatever I need to for that particular whatever I'm doing.
Right.
And I can do it all day long, and then dinner's ready.
Yeah.
So I think this is, if you're into something like that, into something that's kind of time consuming but doesn't need you to be like constantly there, this is a great candidate for something to do while you're working from home.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I just
Well, so that before we kind of got onto laundry and Roy G. Biv and smoking large meats, you had said something that was kind of interesting to me, and I guess it all depends.
everything they say is interesting.
That's
You have to be more
true.
specific.
That's true. Yep, you got it. No, you had said, if you had to run get dog food or something that you couldn't, you're working and you wouldn't do that. And I think what's important to kind of bring up, because my situation is a little bit different than that. If I needed to run get dog food for my imaginary dog, or run some other errand or whatever, I would have, I don't know why I said that. I would have no problem doing that, just popping a note in the chat saying, hey, I got to go run this errand, I'll be back in 10, 20, half hour, whatever it is. And I think every team makeup is different. There's some teams that are fully distributed or remote.
Yeah.
And there's some teams in office, and I happen to work on a split team like that, where some of us are remote and some of us are
Prisoners.
in the office. Yep, some of us are chained to the desk, as Grumpy would say. And I work with Ben Edmonds, who's on PHP Town Hall, and he's
Don't
on
mention the competition.
what's that?
Don't mention the competition.
He's on an unnamed podcast.
There you go. That's better.
He's on Western. What's it called? Pacific time.
Western.
He's on Western time.
All right.
Right, and so he doesn't generally get in until about 1 o'clock my time.
Yeah.
Which leaves me my morning to get a lot of things done that I can get done without him. And then obviously when he comes in. But I mean, I think for me one of the huge advantages to being remote was that I could, or that I can, go do, not every day, and I can't get all my errands done and take 4 hours and go out and run errands, but that there are some errands that I can get done during the workday if they come up, dropping the water bill off, whatever. But I guess that probably depends a little bit more on how your work schedule and things like that are set up. Some places are really flexible, and they don't expect you to be at your desk all waking hours. They expect you to be there most of the day and to communicate when you're not. But
yeah, I suppose I should clarify. I also do have a very flexible environment. And
Right.
my point was more, it's very easy to kind of think that because you're remote that you could do all these things.
Yeah.
And you can. I mean, you can do a lot of them, but like you were saying, there's a point where it starts being detrimental to your productivity. So it's like
Absolutely.
very difficult to, hey, I need to run, this, I need to run this errand really quick and go drop this check off or whatever.
Right.
I need to run to the bank or whatever you got to do, which is something I haven't done in a very long time. But suppose you needed to run to the bank and you need to go do this, and then you're like, oh, by the time you realize it, you've already spent 2 hours out of your day. So now that's like 2 hours of work that you thought you were going to do that you're not. So how do you reconcile that? So it's like, my point is more, just because you're remote doesn't mean that you should stop keeping track of that stuff mentally.
Right.
It's just, you should still pretend that you're in the office in some regards, which...
Yeah, I'm usually pretty miserable, so yeah, I can usually swing that.
Incidentally, when I first started working remote, I told my wife, I was like, look, even if you're home, so like if you're home in the house and I'm in my office working, I was like, text message me if you need something or instant message me or something. And at first, she looked at me like I was nuts, but my whole thing was, I was like, just pretend that I am actually at an office somewhere, so that way we can decide if whatever it is something that I need to attend to right now, or if I could say,
Yes.
okay, we can do it later. And like setting up those boundaries at first is extremely important, or at least it was for me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I would have easily lost in the, oh, I can run a 2-minute errand now, or I can take a break right now and watch this thing on TV, or I can watch this sports ball game or whatever. Like, it would be very easy to do that all day long and then never get anything done. So
Yeah.
just set up some boundaries, at least initially, until you get used to and comfortable with the whole workflow.
Well, and it's more than just you getting comfortable with the whole workflow. It's your team getting comfortable with your workflow too, because they're the ones you're going to be interacting with the whole time. And for a while, it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. Especially like when I started at Synacor, I was the first remote worker on our team, and literally everyone else was in the office, and it was an adjustment for them, getting used to kind of how I work and what I need to get from them in order to do the things that I needed to do. So, the adjustment goes both ways, and I think it's just really important to kind of understand that and know that, you're at home. Your team, especially in a split team like that, in a split distributed local team, they're all going to have a way easier time working with each other, the people that are in the office, than they are working with you.
Yeah.
And so you've got to really adjust your expectations a little bit. And I think that you gave a pro tip earlier. I'll give another one now, and it's to over communicate.
Yeah.
That's your only way to get people, and you're going to be talking more than you think you need to. But if you're only communicating as much as you think you need to, you're probably not communicating enough.
Yeah.
Would be my little pro tip.
Totally agree with that. A phrase I hear a lot is, oh, by the way, yesterday we talked about X. I hear that a lot, and you don't really think about it, but imagine if you were in an office or something and you're sitting in a corner or your office or whatever, and then your coworkers are all having these conversations about things that are relevant to what you're doing,
Right.
and then you hear about it the next day, and it's like, oh, by the way, we were talking about blah 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 yesterday, so we
Right.
decided X, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, I had opinions about that, but we'll just roll with it. So, that's where that whole over communicate thing kind of comes in.
Yeah, for sure.
Is the people who are in the office don't know that you feel passionately about something unless you tell them.
Right.
And you're going to tell them by sitting in chat and mentioning it one time, or whatever. You've got to make sure that it's known that you have an interest in X or Y or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's being, that's kind of coming up in the near future, it's something that you kind of have to kind of be a little bit ahead of the game and know that it's coming up.
Yeah.
And be able to say, hey, when you guys talk about X, I'd like to be involved in that conversation.
For sure.
And then they can Skype you in pantsless.
Yeah, but they don't need to know that you're pantsless.
They know.
Unless you have like a pants indicator. Which
No,
would be that hard.
The few times that I worked pantsless, and I was on a call or something, I always had to remember to scoot my chair out of range. Yeah, out of camera range before I got up to get a glass of water or whatever.
Yeah.
That's another good pro tip is be aware of the camera.
Yeah, also get used to being on camera. If you don't like being on camera, it's not gonna work out for you.
You know what's funny though? Ben and I work pretty closely throughout the day, and when we do Skype calls and stuff, we never use the camera.
You guys, you're missing out on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, probably missing out on each other, picking our noses, and
yeah, and sunglasses. You'll never know if Ben's also wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and assume most of the time that he's not.
Okay. Well,
I think that's a safe assumption.
I used to assume that about you as well, but now whenever I see a tweet from Short White Bald Guy, I imagine it was done by somebody wearing sunglasses.
No, I sleep in them, but that's really about it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, what else is interesting about being a remote developer?
Nothing. I think that's it. Good show.
That's all there is.
No, I think the one of the things that I enjoy the most about it is, as much as I took for granted the fact that I couldn't go to people's desk and get immediate answers, it's also really, really nice to not have people come by your desk. Like if someone IMs me, I can respond in a later time. I can say, hey, you know what? I'm in the middle of something. Give me a half hour. I can kind of dictate the flow of my day.
Yeah.
And figure out how important something is. Like, do you need me to drop this, what I'm doing now, in order to have this conversation? And if the answer is yes, then that's great. And I don't feel as interrupted as somebody coming to my desk going, oh my gosh, we have an emergency.
So that's a very...
find out that it's something that could have waited.
That's a very Pomodoro technique thing.
Oh yeah, you're into that.
Yeah, so I picked this up a long time ago when I was actually in an office, but people interrupt you all the time. Like that's just naturally going to happen, regardless of whether you're remote or not. But they're gonna figure out a way to interrupt you. Yes. So the phrase that you always ask is, "Can this wait 25 minutes?" And the reason is, a traditional Pomodoro is 25 minutes long. So you say, at most you'll have to wait one Pomodoro iteration, I guess, before I can deal with your interruption.
Can we call it an interval?
Yes, you can call it an interval.
Okay, because iteration sounds fragile.
Okay, so you just say, can you wait one interval? And if you don't know what that means, then you're screwed.
Nerd!
But yeah, so you're can it wait 25 minutes? And then if they say yes, then that's good, because now you can continue your work, and then once you're at a point where you can stop and talk to them, then you do. If they say no, then you mark it down as so-and-so's a jackass and came and interrupted me, so I can't do my work. No, I mean, you put down I interrupted or whatever, so you just kind of keep track of that in your head, or right. On whatever your thing is. So I think that's a very useful tool. Something that I've done recently is I actually added a thing on my calendar. There's 30 minutes out of every day, out of most every day, that is called office hours. It's Jeff's office hours. And this, sounds. I felt very pretentious when I was doing it,
You should.
but it's actually a really powerful thing because now, people come in usually around my time, like 10:30 or 11 o'clock, because most of my coworkers are on the West time, whatever you call it, or Western time. And so they come in around 10:30, 11 o'clock my time, and like ask me these questions, and I'm like, can't I wait till my office hours, which is in their afternoon or my afternoon, their late morning or something like that.
Right.
And they say, oh yeah, I can. So then there's like a 30-minute block of time where I'm just in an open hangout. Anyone can jump in and ask me any questions they want, and then I'm kind of stuck there answering questions. No, I mean, it's a good time to communicate things that aren't urgent and just kind of need some input from me or whatever. Just they need to ask me a question for something, and that has worked very, very well. It's it's a useful thing. I've got to the point now where people just say they'll, instead of pinging me with a question in the morning, they'll say, hey, I'm going to join you in office hours today. And I'm like, fantastic.
Okay. That's a good idea.
So you can call me pretentious if you want to, Matt, but it works, man.
Jeff's office. You sound like a
professor.
Professor, yeah.
Yeah.
So the funny thing, it was always funny to me anyway. It's probably really not that funny because most things that are funny to me aren't funny to anyone else. At Synacor, not so much on my team, but on Grumpy's team, right? He worked with Matt Turland a little bit, and they had two computers that were set up, and they were on a Hangout all day long.
Yeah.
So they would have a computer or an iPad or whatever they were doing for their Hangout, and it would just sit there open all day, and then someone could come over and be like, "Hey Chris, hey Matt," and they, and then he would wake up from his grumpy slumber and, not that he was sleeping, but
the opposite, he would be like, smack it in the face, right?
Yeah. And and then they would have that person right there. We tried that on my team for a little bit, and I would find that I just sat in the Hangout by myself all day long. But the one thing that I did do that was cool, this is an effective use of technology, was when I had the Hangout open, I would often join it on a computer and then join it on my iPad.
Yeah. And
so like it was in the summer, the kids were coming over, and I was going to make lunch. I was going to make macaroni and cheese. You know how sometimes if the water can boil out of the pot, right? When you're boiling water.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right, it can
bubble up, yeah.
It can bubble up, right? And
Sure.
So I had the iPad sitting over on the counter next to the stove, watching the pot of water while it boiled. And
so you're literally watching water boil.
Well, I was working, but I could take a glance and go, oh, okay, good, the water's not boiling up.
All right. I mean, I guess that's. I'm sure Google is proud to have supported that as a use case for their platform.
I ate up their bandwidth to watch water boil. But no, it was at the time. It was a really useful thing because otherwise I'd be getting up every 5 minutes to check it to see if it was boiling, to see if I needed to dump the Phineas and Ferb noodles in.
This is like water. The most first world problem. I don't know.
I know, but it was helpful for me at the time.
Okay.
So you learn how to hack things like that, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So a couple things on this. So we were going to go the route of having like a machine that people could constantly be in, but we decided that would not be a fun experience for anybody. So we made our telepresence bot. We had Skype running on it where you could just dial in and it would auto answer. And at first it was like, oh, this is cool. I could just kind of dial in whenever and talk to somebody. But one time I dialed into it, and it was parked against a wall. So I'm sitting there staring at this wall, this brick wall in our office.
Was this Harold that was answering?
Yeah, Harold answered. And so I'm like, hello? And so I'm like, I try to get someone's attention because I can't see who's around, if anyone's around or whatever. And it turns out they were in another room in a meeting, And I'm sitting there talking, and Harold is muted, so nobody can hear. And so I'm going like, "Hello." So I just gave up on that whole concept of having a thing running all the time. Okay, so along these lines, since we're talking about communication, we got a pretty good question.
Oh,
What are our experiences with the employer dictating what tools you use directly relating to being a remote employee? So, example would be like communication tools, stuff like that. I think it's a really good question.
yeah,
So,
excellent question.
I have, or I guess when we started, or when I started being remote, it was kind of just text. Like we just had a chat room that we used, and we used HipChat for that. So it's just like that. And then as we started growing as a team, we found out that we actually needed some other stuff. So it was kind of a trial of what works, what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ran into situations where like larger meetings they were trying to do with WebEx and a MacBook Air or something sitting at the front of the room, so you can't really hear anything from like other people participating or whatever.
Right.
So we grew the tools over there. So I think like I do think that a lot of employers you're not going to have as much freedom as I do with mine because of the size and like kind of the general feeling you have. Like you're going to end up in situations where you have to deal with a VPN device and you have to deal with certain tools, like maybe you want to use Hangouts, but that's not allowed for some reason. Like if you have to use some enterprise product or whatever, like there's lots of people have different things. So I think for me personally, my experience is that I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of choose what I wanted to use
Right.
for it, and a lot of that, in my opinion, should be something that you should figure out a way to voice with your company. Like if you're dissatisfied with something or if it's not working, figure out a way to say, hey, this isn't working. I would much rather try, for example, we used Skype for a long time, but Skype really sucks for group calls.
Yeah.
It degrades up to like 3 minutes. So we
And then
switched to
talking to the
Hangouts.
robot voice.
Yeah, everyone's talking in robot voice delayed, and yada yada. So
Yep.
we switched to Hangouts for that, and then we integrated it with our calendars, attached to it, which works really well for other things. So like our stand-ups are just a recurring Hangout link that you can just jump into, and you're there, and it works very, very well. So I think
you can plan them up to like 2 years in advance.
probably, and
Or you can have a two-year length meeting and attach a call to it and have the same Hangout link for.
Well, I found that actually, so we have like a stand-up.
Well, actually, me again.
No, I'm not well actually. I'm just saying my experience. We've got a stand-up that's just scheduled a whole bunch of times, like every day for 30 minutes or whatever. So it's not, I don't know if it's indefinite or whatever, but it's just there, and you can do it at any time of the day. Anyone could just jump in that link and it'll start the Hangout. Like it doesn't really care if
it's during
the calendar entry. Yeah. So it's. I think it would work indefinitely, regardless of.
What we used to do is we would create a recurring meeting and have it recur for like 2 years or something. Or no, it wasn't a recurring meeting. It was a 2-year long meeting.
Yeah.
Which is how most of them feel anyway. Am I right? And we attached a call to that meeting, and we're able to use the same link for the Hangout.
Yeah.
Right, so the link never changed. So if anyone needed to hop in, they didn't have to go to the calendar. They could just bookmark the Hangout and pop in there at any time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I can't remember if it was recurring or if it was a length of time, but
it doesn't need to be a length of time. The link will work regardless.
No, it doesn't. After a while.
That's for me, man.
Well,
I mean, yeah, if you don't have a recurring event, then I think it'll probably die after a certain amount of time. But
it'll just say this Hangout is. It'll be like it's like the operator. I don't know if you're you're not that much younger than me. When you were a kid, do you remember like the actual like old school operator and
like a switchboard operator concept?
Yeah, and like payphones and stuff.
No, what's that?
Yeah, well, never mind.
It's a phone you pay for. I've got one of those.
Yeah, it's a phone you have to put money in to use.
Yeah, I got one of those too.
You do?
No,
Okay, good.
sort of.
Um,
Yeah, no, I
right,
understand.
right, and they would be like, this number is no longer in service. That's kind of what happens with the Hangouts, is it'll be like, this Hangout is no longer in service.
So just create a 30-minute hangout today, and then set it to recur once a year. So then you have an entire year blocked off where
Yeah.
it will be a valid hangout link. Done.
Essentially, that's what we did, yeah.
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 Not a
Yeah.
2-year long meeting.
Right.
That would be like very obnoxious in the calendar.
Well, it would if you'd make it all day, it would just float across the top bar.
Yeah, and it would look very atrocious.
It's no different. That's where all the vacation. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it matters. It's
The
important.
one thing I wanted to say about the question,
Yeah.
now that I've sidetracked us a little
Oh,
bit.
Mr. Serious here.
Yeah. Well, the one point I wanted to make about that was, a lot of times being remote, you don't really have a choice, right? You don't want to have, you don't want to run into a situation where like you feel really comfortable using Slack, but the rest of your team uses HipChat, and then some people are on. So you don't want to have your team broken up into 4 or 5 different tools, and then you have to remember who looks at what the most in order to get in contact with them, and then you've got 5 communication applications open throughout your workday. So as far as communication goes, sometimes you end up working with something that you don't like, and if you don't like it, I would definitely recommend voicing that opinion and saying, hey, this isn't working for me, or this isn't horribly efficient or effective for me. Can we investigate some other options? And sometimes they'll say yeah, and sometimes they'll say no.
And back it up with examples or
yeah, absolutely.
concrete reasons, not just I don't like HipChat.
Right, because we had toyed around with the idea of like do we set up an IRC server? We went to HipChat for a while and like no one used it, and now we're on Slack and it seems to be a little bit better. But my company's also really open to like, hey, let's make sure we're doing this right. And if I voice concerns about Skype or HipChat or Slack or whatever, they would get listened to. And doesn't necessarily mean we'd change, but I would feel like that input was valued, and we'd try to find, if it was a common concern, we'd try to find a tool that met our needs. But so I mean, a lot of times, just like with any other tools, any sort of technical tools, if you're, hopefully they're not telling you what like editor to use, but as far as your stack and stuff, like you can't change that. That is what it is. Communication tools are kind of the same way. You kind of got to go where the people are.
Yeah, and I mean, there's certainly rules around things. Like the VPN example is, I mean, there's certain situations where that's required. So I mean, it's not really, you can't really get around a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, as far as if something isn't working for you, like if HipChat is on Adobe Air still and doesn't work for you, then you say that. Say, this thing crashes for me every day. It's very obnoxious. So I'd like to figure something out and just talk about it. Excuse me. I found that kind of being a remote engineer, like people or remote developer, people tend to focus a lot on like trying to enable you to do your job. Like I don't know. Maybe that's just my personal experience, but it's like we have that split situation as well. So we've got people in the office plus remote people, and it's like a lot of times it is very easy to under communicate. So you end up with hey, how's everything going? Like you end up with like 5 people asking you how it's going. So for me, that just kind of tells me that I'm not doing a good job of communicating things. So you have to really you have to keep in check with yourself. As sort of asking you questions, it's not because they're nosy or whatever. It's because they just don't know. Like they actually want to know how it's going. So pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed too with that is, because and if you couldn't tell, I talk a lot. I tend to communicate a lot. Um, and
What?
that's, yeah, I know. I'm the only person that likes hearing himself talk. Um, I found that, one of the advantages to that, to over communicating and also having kind of a flexible schedule, is that if I really need to get something from Ben or from some other coworkers and they're not available, right? And they're like, hey, I need a half hour,
Yeah.
that can be, that's dealt with pretty easily. Usually, I can say, okay, well, I can't really go forward on anything else until this is resolved, so I'm going to take care of some things, and that means I'm going to be working a half hour later tonight, but I'm going to get these things done that I was planning on getting done. So it allows me to kind of move things around in my schedule. Part of it is that I'm still relatively new at my job, and so that I'm not completely free to fly yet, so to speak. Right? I'm still there's still some things I'm learning and I'm picking up and things like that. And so if I really, really need something before I can move on, I might say, okay, well, I gotta run to the bank. I gotta go drop this check off. I'll do that, and then if I can kill a couple extra tickets at night once that one's done, it allows me to just kind of be flexible, and I don't necessarily have to have a 9 to 5 straight through, work day. And it also works with Ben being in the Western time zone, which is what I'm going to call it from now on. Because he doesn't get on until 1 my time, which means if I have something come up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, it's like, I don't know, like whatever that noon there for him or whatever. No, it's not noon, but you know what I mean. It's much earlier for him, and most of the other people from the office have gone home, so he usually has the time that I have in the morning where no one's bugging me. He has that time in the evening where I can bug him.
Well, that's convenient for you.
Yeah, yeah. But no, it's usually easier because he's kind of like you in the sense that he's like a bigwig now. Right, and so it's easier for him because he's not dealing with clients and other things going on because everyone else has gone home. So it's a lot easier for him to give me time after 5 o'clock Central, and I'm on Eastern, so that's 6 o'clock my time. It's way easier for him to give me uninterrupted focus time then than it is when he first gets on and it's noon Central time and there's a bunch of meetings and calls and stuff. So it's about flexibility. It's about kind of knowing when your hot times are and when, the times where you can kind of disturb people the least. And yeah, we're just really good about communicating times where, hey, you know what, I'm gonna put my status on Do Not Disturb because I really need to power through this. If it's an emergency, email me or call me or something.
Yeah.
And just that flexibility and that good communication and not feeling bad about being like, hey, you know what, I can't talk to you right now, or I'm going in to Do Not Disturb for a few hours. Just being able to be comfortable with that and knowing that your coworkers are going to respect that makes it way, way easier to kind of make the whole remote thing work a lot smoother.
Yeah. Here's something that we're experimenting that's kind of helping with some of that as well. Rick's idea of developing some asynchronous communication channels. So, this works well for processes, so why not apply it to people, right? We
design that.
Yeah, kind of.
Works for machines, right?
Yeah. Right now we're just doing like shared Google Docs. So you could just have like a shared Google Doc or like a shared directory or something. It's like, hey, put everything in here. So like with my boss, I've got this one-on-one, I guess log you could call it, but basically anything that comes up between our actual, face-to-face or
screen
to screen conversations, we just kind of put it in there. So we say like, if I've got a question that comes up that doesn't need an immediate answer, so it's not something I need to put on chat or phone call or whatever. It's something that just can kind of be answered whenever. I'll put it in there as something to discuss, and then likewise he can go in and say, oh, there's these 5 things. Let me answer some of them and just talk about them in there in text. Then when we get to the actual one-on-one, we can clarify anything we need to clarify, or just take it and move it to the bottom of the document and say, date done or whatever, and we don't have to worry about it. So we're kind of experimenting with this as a concept because I think, especially for remotes that are across time zones, we run into these weird situations where, for me, the first part of my day is, only one of my coworkers is around, and then around the time when I'm more or less done, because my son's coming home from daycare, and I call it a little meeting interrupter. But around that time, that's when you want to schedule everything, because it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock their time. So it's a good time to schedule all these meetings. For some reason, that's when humans tend to like to do things. But
wouldn't know.
Yeah. So I found that this asynchronous thing is actually a really cool, or a useful tool for even if you're in an office. Like, why not keep things that don't need to be interrupting or blocking, if you want to call it that, keep them separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't act like that's. You should do this, Matt. It works.
I'll get right on that.
I don't think.
All right, so I have a topic here.
Okay.
Perhaps you noticed this on the Twitters the other day.
I've heard of Twitter.
Yep, it's
a thing.
It's a thing. So I'd heard. Actually, I think I remember who tweeted it. Now that I say that, I think Taylor Otwell had made the suggestion or supposition that in a few years remote working would start to fall out of favor because of some of the mental health issues that it can cause.
Okay.
Right, the being isolated, and I think that's a really fair point. I think that's a really fair observation.
Yeah.
So, I guess to kind of start with, what are some of the ways that you deal with? Because I'm right, you take your kid to daycare, so I'm assuming your wife's out of the house all day.
Most of the day, yeah.
Yeah, and so you're in your house by yourself.
Yeah.
Except for when you go get dog food.
Yep.
And how do you deal with the isolation?
I talk to the cats.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. So this is actually
cool. Don't.
So this is actually a real thing. Like, this is a real problem, and this is something that kind of surprised me about remote working, was how big of a problem it was. Because at first it was like, this is great. I don't have to talk to anybody.
Right.
All day long. And then it became, I haven't talked to anybody in 3 days. About work anyway. And so I came up with, I don't want to call them coping mechanisms, but I figured out ways that I could deal with this problem in different ways. So I actually go visit the office as much as I can, and
that's in San Francisco.
That's in San Francisco.
Okay.
So I go visit the office as much as I can. Like, for example, I'm going next week for like 4 or 5 days, whatever. But so I do that, and then conferences also take the place of a lot of the social interaction. So, but interestingly, and I think we had this chat at Tech, I found that because of being remote, like, going to conferences is very overwhelming at first. Or like, you get there and you're just like, I'm used to spending 8 to 10 hours a day with nobody.
Yeah.
And now I'm here and there's like 300 people, or more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, hi, how's it going? And I'm like, I really just want something kind of quiet. So I I use conferences. I go travel. I have friends who are remote or who work for themselves or whatever. So we'll get together and just kind of at their house or my house or a coffee shop or something like that. Just kind of we're working together, so it's kind of like co-working, but not really
Yeah.
co-working. Um, I thought about renting a co-working space, which is there's a suggestion about that, but in the IRC channel right now. But I've thought about doing that, but I think for me personally that would just be a huge distraction because it'd be like,
If I'm
or
going
at
to be
least,
here, why not just be in the office?
yeah. I mean, if I'm going to be in a place where there's people talking about things that aren't really relevant to me,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
might as well just go into an office. Yeah. So I do some of that where I'm going somewhere and being physically located with somebody who may or may not be a coworker, but a lot of times I don't know. I try to keep my trips. I try to keep at least one trip a month
Yeah.
where I've got people to talk with. So that helps me. That helps me myself. Like it may not be enough for somebody else. So I think
Right.
it depends on the person.
Yeah. And I tend to feel the isolation quite a bit.
Yeah.
I tend to and as you probably know, as a lot of people probably know, I tend to travel quite a bit, whether it be conferences or back to see family or a random trip to Dallas to go spend a week with Jake and Bob and do some really fun stuff and just kind of work from different places. And that's one of the other nice things about being remote is I could kind of go visit a friend and set the expectation that hey, during the day I'm going to have to be holed up somewhere working.
It's
But
also a bad thing, though, remote. But go on.
all right, don't rain on my parade. Um, but yeah, I tend to feel the isolation quite a bit more, and as it is, I tend to go home to see my mom and brother and sister and my dad sometimes, um, quite a bit, like probably 8 or 9 times a year. But I haven't, during in the day to day, I haven't really figured out a good way
Yeah.
um, to break that. But I will say the one thing that I really, really enjoy about working with Ben is that he's just a really awesome guy. And there's a lot of times. I mean, granted, I talk to him, most days, and we talk about work most of the times. But it seems like once every week or two, um, we'll just kind of not even really planned. It'll just kind of happen where he'll notice that I've been struggling with something, whether it be from my tweets or whether it be just kind of from whatever, and we'll just have a good half hour to an hour long conversation about life and how things are going, and not bring up work at all. And so I think if you have, um, it's hard to say if you have a boss that like pays attention to you as a person, right, instead of just someone that's working. Um,
It's kind of a resource.
right. I didn't want to say that, but yeah, that's essentially what I was trying to say. Right. So if you can have that, right, and I know that if I tweet something that's like weird, well, I mean like
Weirder.
weirder than normal,
Yeah.
that he's going to ask me about it and he's going to make sure that I'm okay and sometimes I don't think about that before I tweet, but it's something that really helps me get through it, and it's something that I really really appreciate about being able to work with him is that he's there and he cares and he understands um, some of the challenges of being remote and working remote, and also enough about me as a person and the things that I'm going through and struggles that I'm having personally, um, and that he's not afraid to have that conversation with me.
Yeah.
And I think with the kind of increased focus on mental health, right? It's been a thing now for a while. Um, if you're new to remote working or considering a remote position, that might be a good conversation to have up front, right? Just to talk about, um, and if you're an employer and you're considering, you have remotes or you consider having remotes, that might be a good topic to kind of maybe come up with a I don't want to say a policy, but just some information around, like, hey, you're remote, and there are going to be times where the isolation gets pretty rough.
Yeah.
And here's some things you can do to get involved in a user group, get involved in uh, going to conferences. It's a great way to be able to to say, hey, there's this conference I want to go to. I think it's going to make me a better developer and allow me to bring some of that information back to the company and benefit everyone. It's a good way to have that conversation and say, okay, I know it's going to get rough sometimes. As a company, can we provide any sort of list of ideas or maybe company policies, maybe having a one-on-one meeting that's not focused so much on just work?
Yeah.
That type of stuff to kind of help offset some of that emotional toll.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing?
No reason. So a couple things.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all,
That was serious.
Kind of boils down to like the or something that I always tell people whenever they first figure out or first hear that I'm remote. They're like, "That must be so cool, dude." I'm like, "Yeah, being remote is awesome, but here's something to realize: it's not for everybody." Like, and I know that sounds like an elitist thing to say or whatever. Like, I can do this, you can't, but it's really not for everyone. And Brian in the IRC channel actually has a very good point that there's probably a correlation between personality type and ability to be a productive remote worker, because it does require a certain level of at least being comfortable with the idea of being introverted. Like, you have to be able to deal with some of that, even if you're not quote unquote introverted or whatever. Maybe you really like people. I don't know why. But maybe you really like people, but you have to be able to understand that there is going to be some isolation. There is going to be some times where you want to talk to somebody and no one's around, or something to that effect. So just it does require a certain personality type and also discipline. Like, it requires a lot of discipline to be remote. So you have to be, I think for me personally, being as systematic, I guess, as I am.
You can say anal.
As anal as I am, it helps me because it's like that really keeps me on track as someone who's remote. So it really focus on, hey, what should I be working on right now, or it keeps me organized in terms of I can sit down or I can shut down my computer right now and then come back to work tomorrow morning and know exactly what I was working on. I may not be in the exact same mindset, but having that discipline really does help me. So there's that point. And then I wanted to, you said that the cool thing about being remote is you can literally work anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, that is a very good benefit, because I can do, like you were talking about, I could do a tour of the United States by car, and I could work everywhere I go. It wouldn't be a big deal. Which
I kind of would, but yeah.
Well, Brett from Foxcart does this.
Yeah.
Well, not quite, but he does something similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you can do that. But the detriment is, or the bad side of that is that you can literally work anywhere. So you don't, like, having the skills to be able to do your work from any physical location means that you theoretically can never say, I can't do that. You can say, I don't want to, or I'm scheduled to be off, or something to that effect, but you can never really say you can't. So it is very easy, and you have to be very vigilant about turning things off. And
that's a boundary thing, though.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But I mean, the point is, if you're that type of person that gets really wrapped up in things, like, this goes back to the personality types thing, but if you get really wrapped up in things, you're like, I'm going to keep working on this till it's done, it's very easy to work on something for 3 days and not realize it.
Right. No, absolutely.
You have to be able to set things aside. And I mean, this is the same thing as when I was growing up. Like, my dad started companies, like construction companies and stuff, out of the house, and it's like you've got
Hmm.
an office, and it's very easy to be like, oh, I'm done with dinner. Let me go do a little bit of paperwork, and then before you know it, it's midnight.
Yeah.
And so it is something that is a challenge sometimes.
Yeah.
And what I found that helps is I've got a separate computer that's my personal stuff from my work stuff. So it
Yeah.
is very easy for me to not work. Like, it is very easy for me to be like, okay, I'm closing this down and going and doing. I'm still going to be on the internet, and I might be coding still, but I'm
Right.
at least not doing my work, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And so that's about it. You have to set up, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you get burnt.
And that's the thing, I think, for employers, right? If you're going to hire remote people and you know that you're going to be calling on them at all hours, right? That's the other thing is, you get a call late night. You have to set that expectation as well,
Yeah.
right? You have to say, hey, you know what? We're going to make every effort that we can to respect your family time or whatever, right? Your time that you're not at work. But there is a likelihood that from time to time we may have to call you, or there is the likelihood that we may have to call you every night, right? Whatever the expectation is,
Yeah.
and to give as much lead time to that person, to that remote worker, or really to any worker, whether they're in the office or not,
Yeah.
to be able to adjust their schedule to that. Again, I mean, I feel like where I'm at, they're really respectful of my away from the office time. And if I was going to go travel and not expect to work, like I would probably still, not probably, I would still bring my work computer, but I would make sure that I set the expectation that I was out of the office.
Yep.
And not that I couldn't work or not that I wouldn't work, but that I'm out of the office.
Yeah, and I think this is a thing. Like, I do this a lot. So we have on call. So I go on call every once in a while,
Yeah, we do.
and so there's times when I'm committed to responding to any incident, whatever it is, within 15 minutes, essentially.
Right.
So this is where the skills being a remote worker actually really come in handy, because
Mhm.
I can go on a road trip or whatever over holidays, and I can be on call, and
Yep.
then if we're in the middle of nowhere, or at least somewhere where we've got cell reception, essentially, I can jump on my my MiFi and work, because I've already got things set up and I already know how to do it from remote or whatever.
Yeah.
Which not everyone has the skills down to be able to do that,
Right.
but something that's interesting or useful, or that I do, is when I'm going on a vacation, I'll actually delete my work email account, my work chat, everything that would bother me, from my phone.
Yeah.
So I get rid of that. I bring my work laptop. So if the world's on fire, I'll fix something. But since I
That's nice.
am, yeah, it's nice. But since I am on vacation, and and the reason I'm on vacation is because I want a mental break. Um, I take off those immediate notification things and say, if you really need to get my attention, send me a text message or call me.
Yeah.
I know it's weird, but voices actually work on phones. So I
Text.
said, do that, and then I will get on my computer if necessary. But
Okay.
I'm not going to be checking email. I'm not going to be responding in chat. So I don't care about any of that stuff for this period of time, like 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatever it is.
Right. Right.
And that has been very, very useful, because I don't think that I've had an emergency yet that I had to deal with, but the times that I've been on vacation, it's been very refreshing to not have a constant look at like chat, because this is again another thing about being remote that you have to be aware of is, since you're going to build those skills up of being very over communicative and like really trying to keep yourself in the loop, you're going to naturally want to do that stuff even when you told yourself that you're not. so or at least that's my experience is I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take this week off, and then I'm like, oh, I wonder how's it going? Like how many times did we release today? Or just
Mm-hmm.
things that I pay attention to or keep track of in my head. I want to keep updating it. It's like a drug. So I have to set that boundary, that actual barrier of not having chat available to me, to not keep up with what's going on in certain rooms, or like, we've got an on-call room where all of our automated stuff goes when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Keeping up with that stuff, like just saying, I don't care this week. I'm not on call. I'm on vacation.
Right.
I'm not going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like people in the office are going to take vacation and they're going to go, not come into the office for a week. You're essentially doing the same thing when you go on vacation, and the more that you kind of give in on that and say, okay, well, I'm on vacation, but I guess I could do this one thing or I could do that, right? Then your vacation time slowly becomes, you're basically communicating to your coworkers and your boss that, well, even if I'm on vacation, I don't mind working a little bit.
Yeah.
And then as that's kind of continuous and ongoing, then they're just going to be like, well, he's on vacation, but he took care of this last time.
Yeah.
Or,
That's
she's out, but the last time we called her with something that was relatively urgent, she jumped right on it.
So you just said something that made me think. In-office
I
employees.
do that a lot, don't I?
Yeah. In-office employees, when they go on vacation, their natural communication and natural work environment,
Yes.
they're no longer in it.
Right.
But when you're remote and you go on vacation, your natural work environment, your natural communication environment is the internet, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's there. Like, it's not like you can say, well, I'm physically not located on my desk, therefore I can't talk to you, because it's like they don't know where you are. So yeah, it's
right. It's more obvious for an in-office person to be out of their work environment than it is which is again where the communication and the boundary setting and the expectation setting kind of comes into play, because you have to be, I mean, I have no problem with work telling me, hey, I know you're going to be out the next couple of days, but if you could you bring your work computer with you?
yeah.
I have no problem with that. I mean, absolutely, yeah. And if the world catches on fire one night and I got to jump on to help resolve things,
Yeah.
then absolutely I will. But it's it's kind of like an escalation thing. Like, at what point, how bad does something have to be to justify to yourself, I need to jump in and fix this?
Yeah. So I was at ZenCon 2 weeks ago or whatever, and I was finishing up a really big project that needed some more attention. So I did some work while I was there, and not a big deal. I already had the skills and everything to do it, so it wasn't a huge deal to do it.
Right.
For me anyway. And it was like, I'm at a conference, but I'm not technically on vacation, really. Like,
Right.
I normally don't do any work when I'm at a conference, but because I'm trying to be at the conference. And, it's learn and get that social interaction time that we were talking about earlier. But
Right.
If it is something that is a need, then I'll do it. It's not a big deal.
Right.
I think it's just like you're saying, like just making sure that the boundaries are consistent. That's the more important thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that you wanted to cover in regard to remote working?
To remote working?
Remote.
No, I don't think so. I think that's everything that I have.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there is something else, but I'm forgetting it now. So.
Well, if people have, why don't we give them an opportunity? I know there's been some questions coming in. Anybody in IRC have any more questions for us before we wrap this thing up?
And now the silence begins.
Yeah, crickets.
Yeah. No, I just had something that I was going to say. I don't remember what it is. So I'm sure it was a very, very inspiring thing.
Right.
Yeah. A good thing to end with.
We're all winners. That's what
Yes,
you're saying.
we are all winners. That's correct.
Okay. Well, you have a minute here to think about it
Oh
as
yeah,
we wait for the audio to stream across the internet.
yeah. Well, that's kind of the problem with this live broadcast thing.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I think what at most there's probably a 30-second delay,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
which is a lot when you're listening.
yes, it is. Well, it's kind of funny because it's like trying to keep track of
Oh, hold
we're
on.
talking about something,
Yeah, looks
and
like we
then
might be having one here.
maybe have a delay.
No, we might be having a question. We do. We have a question.
Oh, in Google.
No, in IRC. Pair programming, a thing with remote working? Question mark.
I don't see this anywhere.
What? Am I in the wrong channel? No.
Okay, well, I guess my IRC channel,
Okay.
my IRC client's dead.
Okay. Well, so we have a question here. It's basically, is pair programming a thing with remote working?
Yes.
How do you?
Question.
All right. Thanks for the question. Well, no, I've done it in the past, and what we would typically do, because this is the one advantage that we had when I was at Cinecore to using the VM system that we had, right?
Yep.
Was that we could use Screen or Tmux or something like that to connect to a remote session and actually both have access to the window.
Yep.
Right, which is a really good way to pair program. Coupling that with a with a Skype or a Hangout or something, some sort of video chat.
Yep.
And I've also noticed too, now more so than that, I'll use like Skype, or I liked HipChats better, but we tend to use Skype for like screen sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so someone can kind of watch you work and call things out to you as they see them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in some cases I do it more now that I'm remote than I ever did when I was in the office. I think it's actually easier to do remote than it is to do in person.
I don't know if I go that far, but yeah, it is.
For me.
It is okay. Sure. But, yeah. So we use similar stuff or similar ideas. We actually have the infrastructure set up so that we can deploy remote boxes very easily.
Okay.
We don't do our dev on a remote box, but
Right.
We can deploy to a remote box very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we will do that, or we could do that as a way to kind of work on things. Just kind of push up a new system and then work there. If we wanted to do the Tmux or screen thing,
Yep.
Which we have done in the past. We've also just there were a couple of tools that we used before that do this natively. Same concept natively, just kind of you've got a code base, you say spin up a box and it rolls.
Yep.
And then we use Screen Hero as well, which is an interesting one.
Screen Hero?
Screen Hero, yeah. It's kind of a cool tool because you can, two people who are connected to it, you can actually type on the same machine. So like if I was sharing with you, you could type and it would show up in my screen or in my editor or whatever, and then you can move, like you've got your own mouse cursor and everything. So it does some cool stuff, but
okay.
It's a useful tool. We also do the Skype screen sharing thing just for generic questions or whatever. And
Reviews, right?
yeah, I mean, if you've got something you're like, hey, I need some help figuring this out, we'll do that way. So
yep.
We do a lot of pairing. It is a thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the follow-up question is, do you do it often? And yeah, I mean, I think I probably do a screen share with Ben or with with James, one of my other coworkers, like probably once a day.
Yeah.
There's something going on where I'll need to share a screen, whether it's fixing a problem or actually looking at code or whatever. We don't do so much interactive stuff now, like with the remote screen session and stuff like that, but we definitely do a lot of screen sharing and a lot of like, hey, can I get your eyes on this?
Yeah. We don't do as much on my team. We
Hmm.
used to do a lot more, especially as we were kind of fleshing out ideas for things
Is
like
that because you're a bigwig now?
yeah, but or no, yeah, sure. But as we were fleshing out like ideas for an infrastructure like approach, like an architectural approach, we did a lot of that kind of pair hammering each other in the head concept.
Yes.
But now, and but I suspect I will be doing a lot more, especially in the coming future, because of hiring new people. So just bringing them up to speed will probably be a lot easier in a pairing type situation. So, but yeah, for the most part, for the past like few months, I have maybe screen shared like 5 times tops, but could be
Slacker.
as much as 3 times a day. It just depends on what we're doing. We do all of our code reviews kind of asynchronously through GitHub, so we
Yeah.
don't really spend that much time where we need to like walk through and hold each other's hand, I guess.
I need a lot of hand holding.
Yeah. Well, you know, Ben's a cool guy, so I can understand.
Yeah. He's very patient with me. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, it looks like that little flow of questions has subsided, and we've been blathering. I mean, putting together strong, coherent thoughts for about an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
So it seems like as good a time as any to maybe wrap this thing up.
Sure. So the takeaways here are, communication is a very important thing.
Yep.
Really get that solid. Boundaries are also extremely important. Get those rock solid. You can choose to be a pants person or a no pants person. Doesn't really matter. It's not a requirement to be part of the cool remote crowd, I guess.
Just be aware of your setup and your
Yeah.
general decorum. Yeah.
Yeah. Be aware of the limitations and the angles of your video camera.
Yes.
That's an important thing.
Absolutely.
If you're a neurotic person, that's probably a good thing for remote anyway. Right?
Yep.
Is
Yep.
that a takeaway? That could
Yep.
be a takeaway.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll add it to my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always, find a way to get organized.
Yeah.
I find a way to organize your day and get involved with other things. Get involved with events and people outside of work
Yeah.
because the one last thing I wanted to say about that I noticed more when I was at Cinecor was that when you're remote, and I mean I was only 2.5 hours away, so I could have driven out for anything if I wanted to. But there are going to be times where your coworkers are going to go out for drinks, or there's going to be some sort of company event. Like at Cinecor, they did a monthly, and I wasn't going to go out monthly for some of the things.
Yeah.
Um, but you are going to get left out from those, or even if they bring lunch into the office, right? If
Yep.
they're aware and they realize that, hey, maybe that'll make our remote workers kind of like not feel great. Sometimes they'll let you go get lunch and expense it or whatever.
Yep.
But there are those kind of camaraderie, little in-office perk things that you miss being remote. So if that really bothers you, make sure you talk to your superior, your big wig, if you will, and see if there's something that they can do about that. Chances are if they're willing to buy lunch for the whole rest of the team and you're not in the office, that they're going to probably be cool with you expensing your Whopper
Yeah.
or your sushi or your, Arby's chicken bacon Swiss or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. And if you're a manager of someone who's remote, my advice is, when you have those company type events where you're doing something for someone, send the calendar invitation to the remote people anyway. Like
Yeah.
they'll probably, at least in my case anyway, I decline 90% of them or whatever.
Right.
But send the invite anyway.
Yeah.
It's it's something that's just saying, hey, I understand. And then if that particular person is like, hey, I would, I feel like, if we're doing a group lunch or whatever, that maybe, hey, I should expense something, they'll at that point tell you, that most likely. So, or just, offer it anyway, but most likely if they have the knowledge that something's going to happen, they'll probably figure out a way to tell you that they're feeling excluded or something to that effect. So just pay attention to that stuff.
It's less about a free lunch and it's more about just kind of feeling included and feeling part of the team.
Definitely.
I always fell into the trap where I was like, well, if I ask to expense a lunch, it's going to look like I'm just trying to get a free lunch. But it was more than that. It was like, hey, you guys are all getting food, and I mean, granted, the pizza in Buffalo was hard to call it that.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I just want to know that I'm as appreciated and as valued as the other people, and just want to feel included. And so if you're a boss and you have remote workers and you do those kind of things, or you'll buy food for the people in the office, maybe take the initiative and just send a note out to all the remote people and say, hey, you know what, we're bringing lunch in for everybody. Go ahead and go out and get yourself something to eat and send us the receipt, and we'll reimburse you for it. And if it's a big group thing, maybe throw up a video chat and y'all can eat together. And try to make it as much like that person's in the office as possible.
Small concessions go a very long way.
Absolutely. It's a gesture, and it often brings a lot of goodwill with it.
Yep, sure does. So I think that's
goodwill hunting.
And with that joke, I think we'll call this one a wrap. So that was episode 14 of the Loosely Coupled Podcast. We thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.